2019 is set to be a very interesting year for Destiny, guys. And I think it's going to be a pretty colourful year for looter shooters in general, but of course Destiny is the game that we're most interested in right here, and with some of the recent turbulence between Bungie and the current publisher Activision, a lot of folks are left wondering what is going to happen next. So we are going to speak about how Bungie are kind of handling the next few months, we'll talk about upcoming content drops, some release dates, and then we're going to round up some things we know about content beyond Year 2, and some distinct possibilities when it comes to that big September drop that we've come to expect. Of course, with all of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, it is possible that the kind of frequency of content, or the schedule of content could be different this time around, so we'll talk about that in this video as well. First up though, let's speak briefly about some of the content we'll be getting over the next few months. One of the big questions I've seen a lot is when does Joker's Wild drop? Of course, Joker's Wild will be the second annual pass DLC, and what Bungie have advertised is that Season 5, the current season of Destiny 2, is going to end on March the 4th. And as you guys all know, with the past couple of season changeovers, what Bungie have done is had kind of an in-between week. So March 4th is when this season ends. It's possible we'll have to wait another week for Joker's Wild to drop, but the two most likely dates would be March 5th, which is a Tuesday, but even more likely is March 12th the following week. There have been other questions, including season-locked content. So some folks have asked, can we acquire pinnacle weapons, things like Breakneck, in the next season? And Bungie haven't clarified for sure what's going to happen with those weapons yet, but Bungie does seem to have moved position a little bit on seasonal weapons, whereby they stick around. Things like Not Forgotten, Luna's Howl, the reprised Redrix, all of those have remained obtainable, but I will keep you guys posted as soon as we hear any official word from Bungie. I'll link a video below with more details about Season of the Drifter that we know about, but of course, after Season of the Drifter, which is running up until June, we'll get Penumbra, which is the final annual pass drop, and when it comes to the relationship between Bungie and Activision, this will be the final release that Vicarious Visions helps to produce as part of that Bungie-Activision contract, and of course, Vicarious Visions is an Activision-owned studio. So as far as we know, any time after June or July of this year is when the Bungie-Activision kind of relationship will truly end as they ship the final product together. And so it raises the question, what can we expect from Destiny 2 after the summer of 2019? Well, initially, the most reliable kind of leak source that we've had for Destiny content in recent times suggested that the plan was to have a Year 3 annual pass, so pretty similar to what we've had in Year 2, a bunch of content drops that roll out throughout the year, but these details also suggested that there will be no Comet expansion. However, it is possible that it could start with a bigger content drop in September. So this is the point where things get pretty interesting, of course. Presumably, based on what we know, Bungie would be self-publishing any remaining content for Destiny 2, and let's talk about some possibilities here. While there may be some negative sounding possibilities, I think it's important to recognize the scale of what lies ahead for Bungie, but we should also recognize that it's likely that any content we get after the summer of this year will be self-published by Bungie. So here's an interesting question. Is the second annual pass for Destiny 2 still a thing? Well, of course, it is possible that Bungie is still planning to do an annual pass style drop for Year 3, but in order to produce this level of content, Bungie have relied quite a bit on the Activision studios that have worked alongside them. Vicarious Visions especially have been a huge part of the process when it comes to a lot of the expansions. Warmind, Forsaken, and all of the annual pass stuff we're getting right now. And on top of this, any content that would drop after September of this year will be in a pretty interesting spot because it will be launching into a game that is kind of a legacy product that initially launched as part of a deal that doesn't exist anymore. So that strikes me as a pretty unusual position to be in, but of course I can't claim to know the kind of business or technicalities behind that. One way or another, Bungie are definitely producing some kind of future content, so let's speak about the key possibilities for Year 3 or the future of the franchise, considering that Bungie, as far as we know, are producing Destiny 3 right now. Of course, that takes a lot of energy, but is also a huge opportunity for Bungie. However, without the support that they have been receiving from Activision, it does mean that they have their work cut out for them, and at some point in time, their next big product will have to ultimately be the priority. So what is possible for future Destiny 2 content? Firstly, an interesting question would be, was the September launch period an Activision thing? Of course, Activision Publishing love their fall releases, and that includes things like Call of Duty, but of course in a world without Activision, it is possible that Bungie would no longer want to kind of adhere to that schedule. Now in terms of content drops, there are a few different possibilities. Firstly, a Rise of Iron or maybe a little bit bigger size drop of content for the game. Of course, going back in time, in Year 3 of Destiny 1, we got that Rise of Iron expansion. And something interesting to note is that as far as we know, it took around about 9 months to put together the core content of Rise of Iron according to leaks. However, considering some of the stuff we've seen in Destiny 2, it's possible that they could have taken some existing Destiny 2 stuff and used that to produce elements of Rise of Iron. So maybe that is something that Bungie can do again. Obviously, it wouldn't quite be as tasking as producing something as large as Forsaken, and my personal guess as well is that it will be slightly easier than managing multiple content drops in something like the annual pass, even though those drops are smaller. Either way, just like in year 3 of Destiny 1, a Rise of Iron style drop is definitely possible. Another possibility would be a Warmind size drop. Of course, historically, fall expansions have been pretty big, but maybe a smaller focus content drop, as well as some updates and events throughout year 3, could hold the player base over for a few months, and maybe realistically this is something that Bungie could make happen while still focusing on whatever happens in the future, and once again, presumably that is Destiny 3. Now another possibility is that they simply go ahead and we get that annual pass model for year 3. Of course, if it consisted of multiple content drops like the current annual pass, then it does raise the question, is this really viable right now? If Bungie are trying to focus on producing a really great Destiny 3, can they still produce content drops this regularly? Once again, without the support of studios like Vicarious Visions, as well as the fact that Bungie would be juggling their plans for self-publishing at the same time. Another thing that's been mentioned in the community quite a bit would be the possibility of Bungie continuing Destiny 2 as a live game as opposed to launching a Destiny 3. Now this one's much more difficult to speak to for a number of different reasons. Firstly, there is the fact that initially this was an Activision published game, and there could be reasons that it could be complicated for Bungie to sustain the game over the long term, but also, I'm not a game designer, so it's very difficult to speak to whether Bungie could continue to implement new content and changes into Destiny 2, on the current platforms that it's running on. It wasn't necessarily designed to still be receiving content and updates beyond a certain point in its lifecycle. And I'd also say thirdly, that Bungie probably want to diverge considering they're going to be self-publishing games. It's a much bigger opportunity for Bungie to launch a Destiny 3, and as we mentioned before, potentially rejuvenate that audience, and then manage all of the content that they launch on their own terms. Obviously, that is a much more significant opportunity. But back to Destiny 2 Year 3 content, there is one other possibility, and it's not one that I want to ride home super hard because I don't really think it's gonna happen, but of course, we could get no content drop whatsoever for year 3. Now, what would this mean? Well, of course, there are two different sides to this. Number one, it would allow Bungie to focus on Destiny 3 or whatever major content that they're working on behind the scenes. And again, considering the opportunity that they have to take what's working in Destiny 2 right now, and to be able to present a game that is not linked to Activision, it really is Bungie's opportunity to rejuvenate Destiny as a franchise in the bigger market. So of course, if they have the time to focus on that, then that is absolutely huge. But of course, the other side of that is that the current player base, the community of a live game, could have to go without content for a substantial period of time, and that does also put Destiny in kind of a market disadvantage until they launch the next product. And this is one of those that you hear mixed opinions about as well, Some folks say, I'd rather Bungie kind of go away for a little while, take their time, do what they need to do to make a fantastic game, but on the other side of that, for some folks it's a really scary prospect, Not having content for a really long period of time doesn't necessarily feel great either. Once again though, I don't really feel like there should be major concern about that, but it's worth fairly considering the possibilities. So there we go guys, a bit of an interesting look at what we know about current content for Destiny 2, how things are going to roll out, and then how things are going to change in the months ahead. Now that we have a bit more of a dissected kind of understanding of what's going on between Bungie and Activision, and the roadmap for that, it definitely gives us an idea of when things are going to get interesting, and we could probably expect Bungie to start giving us an indication of what might happen in the next few months. So let me know your thoughts about it down below. What do you think could happen with year 2 of Destiny 2? Do you think we're going to get something in September? Do you think we might get an annual pass style drop? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but also what you think about Destiny 3 and how Bungie should handle that. In terms of my kind of raw opinion, outside of speculation, I think Destiny 2 right now is in a really good place. There's a lot that really works in the game, and this time around, Bungie should absolutely take it forward. We need the current systems. We shouldn't see a D1 to D2 kind of situation again. If Bungie take what's working, refine the stuff that isn't so hot, and then expand on systems like Masterworks, mods, set bonuses potentially, exotic catalysts as well, they're absolutely amazing. These kind of systems are some fantastic innovations over what we had in Destiny 1. And we also have some really great progression like titles in the game. Bungie can expand on that and fix some of the stuff that folks don't like so much about it right now. And if they keep making amazing lore, more content that's really worthwhile playing, then honestly, it's Bungie's time to own this. This is Destiny, And one of the really strong inherent things about Destiny is that nothing really fills the Destiny-shaped gap. So, if Bungie play to that, learn once again from Forsaken, and build an amazing next product, then I think Destiny could grow even more again, and remain to be a pinnacle multi-platform looter-shooter. So despite some uncertainty in the near future, for me personally, I have no doubt that Bungie could ship an absolutely amazing product, whatever it is that comes next. So once again guys, let me know your thoughts or concerns down below, but I think it's a good time to have these kind of conversations as the shape and the future of Destiny potentially really changes, and hopefully for the better. And I think a lot of stuff is indicating that that will be the case. So guys, let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed the video, a rating is very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe if you want to see more D2 content. But for now, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.